Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Wrap, brought to you by Michigan Medicine Headlines. I'm Dan Ellman with the Department of Communication, and today I'm joined by three of my communication colleagues. That's because we're celebrating 10 years of Health Lab, an important publication that showcases the incredible work taking place across Michigan medicine. Now, before we dive into that conversation, I'd like the three of you to introduce yourselves and share your roles in the organization. And when you do, let us know what you were doing 10 years ago when Health Lab debuted.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for letting us talk a little bit about Health Lab. I'm Mary Masson, and I am the Senior Director of Public Relations here at Michigan Medicine. So I lead the team that does most of our content creation, handles our social media channels, our traditional media pitching, and most importantly, we create and feed and care for the Health Lab. And I was there at the beginning when we started, and 10 years ago, all I can think of is that I was worried and nervous about launching this new project, and we did it at the same day as the South by Southwest conference in Austin, Texas. And I was there at that conference, staffing our booth and via phone, trying to watch and make sure that the Health Lab was launched without a hitch. And it all worked out quite well.
Well, my name's Rebecca Priest. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here. So Mary likes to give us a hard time that the marketing team is the one that spends all the money, which is not always true, but the marketing team works on our brand and patient acquisition, referring physician marketing, a lot of things that do involve advertising or search engine advertising and different things that spend money. So a lot of times people think about Mary's work as the earned media, and the stuff that I do tends to be more expensive. But yes, I have, apparently I've been here for almost 16 years. It's it's gone so fast. I started here as the Children's Hospital Marketing Manager. And 10 years ago, I had two little kids that I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so life was a lot different. But I was immersed in children's things, Children's Hospital marketing and little children. So lots changed since then.
Hi, thanks, Daniel, for having us. My name's Johanna Younghans Baker, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Health Lab. And I'm also a media relations specialist for a few departments and divisions within Michigan Medicine. 10 years ago, I was moving from my job in New York City at the Mount Sinai Health System as a media relations specialist and moving over to Boston, working for Brigham and Women's Hospital as a media relations and social media specialist. And now I've been working at Michigan Medicine for 6 or 7 years in this role, helping to spearhead Health Lab.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for the three of you joining here today. Now, as we mentioned, you're here celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Health Lab. Congratulations on reaching that milestone. I know, Mary, you say it might have felt like yesterday, but you've been churning it out for 10 straight years. So can you tell us quickly, for those who aren't yet familiar with the publication, what is Health Lab?
Health Lab is a platform where we post stories about our research, stories about our care, stories quoting our experts about, important health topics. It is kind of our own news outlet, and that is where it came from. We were noticing, my team, we try to pitch out stories about what's happening here at Michigan Medicine to the media. And 10 years ago, and it's the same now, media outlets were dwindling, and we couldn't rely on them to tell our story as much as we maybe had done a decade earlier. And there were so many other ways to build an audience using social media that we decided to launch Health Lab. And it is really a place where you can find inspiring stories about our patients and the journeys they've had with their healthcare, or learn about, cutting edge research that happens every day at Michigan Medicine, where we are really pushing to discover new ways of treating disease.
I think you touched on this a little bit about the why, right? The why behind it with media companies, dwindling their workforces, et cetera. Maybe Rebecca, you could touch a little bit more on that sort of why and how Health Lab began back in 2016.
People sometimes use different ways to describe it, but I think brand journalism is one phrase people use, or content marketing. I think they essentially mean the same thing, but it's sort of acknowledging a shift from everything having to be paid advertising and, saying, schedule your appointment today, buy this, do that, and shifting more towards, news you can use as a way of connecting with our audience. So, I think the old model would have been if we are proud of our neurosurgical services and we want to make sure that we're building our neurosurgical practice, that we would run an ad, or we would, do something kind of traditional marketing. And so this was sort of combining the PR and marketing worlds. And so maybe now we're telling a story about a patient who was able to overcome a neurologic condition. Maybe we're explaining something. We do a lot of explainers. And so instead of just saying, we're the best, come make an appointment, we're sort of telling that story through our patients, through our doctors, through our stories. And again, like Mary said, instead of sort of being dependent on the news media with shrinking staff and limited ability to tell all the stories we have to tell, now we can just go direct to our readers and share it straight with them.
Yeah, and Rebecca points out a good point that we didn't do this to directly acquire patients. This was a brand builder, a brand awareness, brand reputation builder. And then we were also trying to reach an audience of influencers who we could get to directly without having to without having to buy an expensive ad or without having to try and place a story in the media. We built up a social strategy behind this. So we were reaching the audiences that we thought would care about healthcare: scientists, researchers, journalists, patient advocates. And I think Johanna will be able to share some numbers that prove that we have been able to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's great. And so touch on something both of you, just mentioned. It's the way I think a lot in terms of internal communication, which obviously is what I do here at Michigan Medicine as editor of headlines and other sorts of things. It's show, don't tell. Like, I want to show the great work that our employees and team members do on a daily basis. I don't want to just tell you that you do a great job. I'm going to show you and prove it through the stories that we tell, in headlines and in other ways. And I think that's, Rebecca, sort of what you were touching on. Like, we can tell you that our neurosurgery team is great, but we're going to show you more than just tell you, and I think that's a really great distinction. And I think it's something great that Health Lab does, and something that we've tried to bring to the internal audience as well through headlines, where we're not just telling you why your colleagues are amazing. We're just showing you through the work that they do every day. Mary, one thing you mentioned is that, you might have the numbers and things to point at as to how influential Health Lab has been. So Johanna, maybe you can dive into a little bit. How is the publication doing? And maybe you have some statistics behind it.
Yeah, so to give a little flavor, so far, this is the latest number that I have, but we've hit 67 million page views since our conception, which is incredible. On top of that, we have 2 newsletters go out, and it's not a forced subscription. You have to add yourself your own email. And it's over 34,000 subscribers, which is great. They go out weekly. It's once a week. And you can tell that people are really interested in the content. Also, in recent years, we've done a podcast, and we have hundreds of episodes. And I don't have the exact number of how many downloads, but it is really thriving and doing super well. So we just keep expanding our reach, and in different ways. Just like I mentioned, the podcast is kind of a newer venture for us. And in trying to understand and merge ourselves into areas that we know people are consuming their news, not just the straightforward page views and the blog articles that we're writing, but writing those and then getting them out also on social media. But as I said, the podcast, through the newsletters and different avenues like that. And Daniel, I also wanted to point out when they were talking about starting this in Health Lab in 2016, it's so funny because I was in New York City and then in Boston. And now being in a city, the media was kind of still crazy, but you did see that this was happening. And so when I came over to Michigan in 2019, I just thought this was brilliant. I thought it was so innovative, such a smart way. It had been doing so successful already. And it was something that people were kind of questioning in these other markets, like, hey, we're kind of seeing this, but you're kind of so stuck in the day-to-day 24/7 media cycle that it's kind of hard to step yourself out of that. So it was really cool to come along and see marketing and the PR team, come together, join forces and say, what's something that we can do to get our news out in a different way. And it just was really cool to come on and see that. And just kudos to you guys for even coming up with this. And it was awesome.
It really is amazing. Yeah, Rebecca, go ahead.
I was just going to add too, when Johanna talks about other people, we all kind of keep an eye on each other in the academic medical center world. And, certainly I think we were early. We weren't we weren't the first. We were early. But I do think one of the things that differentiated us too was from the beginning, I think, keep me honest, Mary, we had sort of a commitment to sort of pairing our stories with compelling images. From the very beginning, we were doing a lot of custom illustrations, not just stock photos. And that has, I think, been sort of a connective thread from day one to now that some of our peers were also doing this. But I think our sort of commitment to using custom illustrations to help support the stories we were telling, as well as a lot of really beautiful photography of our patients and our providers. But yeah, using sort of custom illustrations to visualize the stories, I think has made us unique too.
We're very lucky here that we have a really talented creative services department that has been on this journey with us, and some original illustrations that just have, knocked it out of the park. But I would say that everything comes from kind of a journalistic integrity kind of basis that, we are very careful about what we put on the site. Everything is well written, closely edited. We're considering all the things, the image, the headline, the kicker. We're really trying to be consistent and careful with the content that we provide. And the illustrations make me smile. And I think that is a real differentiator from, what you might see on the Cleveland Clinic's blog or Mayo Clinic's blog, where they are more apt to use those stock photos. And, I think it sets us apart.
Yeah. Now, bringing in all that beautiful photography and imagery and graphics, not to mention finding the stories, writing the stories, editing the stories, it's a huge undertaking. Every single story that goes up on the site is touched by multiple people. Johanna, maybe you can start this part of it. Can you talk a little bit about the behind the scenes, right? From start to finish, how do you find the stories, tell the stories, all the way through, getting it up on the site and publishing it and then creating these newsletters? There's just so much there.
Yeah, and just like you said, it's a huge team effort. It's not possible if you're missing some members of it or not to make the machine run. So every day we've got an editorial calendar that I oversee as the editor, and we have different story cards on there. And the story cards get created by our writers, and who are our public relations and media relations and marketing specialists. And they basically go to their areas. So they have designated beats, let's call them. But, someone might be working on cardiovascular, somebody else is with nephrology, somebody else is with general medicine, you name it. And so they're getting stories constantly and looking for stories with their specialists in those divisions and departments. And when they find those, then hey, I've got a great idea. They pitch it, or, it goes on the calendar. And then all the elements start coming together. So we make the story card, they start writing the piece. Once the piece comes in, I review, they interview their expert. Then I review and edit the article so that it looks good when it goes to publication. And on top of that, we're also working with the creative team, which you guys just mentioned before, who have been so wonderful. And we are so grateful for all of their illustrations that they've done, original photography, videos. It's just beautiful. And sometimes, of course, we've got the stock images too, just depending on the story. But we're also working and figuring out those elements to go with the story to make it the perfect kind of final piece. And also there's the web team too, who is coming on board to help us with any issues that we have operating, the site, and they're always there to lend a hand. And then we also have our media relations and our marketing specialists pushing out these stories once they go live on the social media platforms as well. So it's a well-oiled machine that depends on a lot of people to make it function in the way that it does. And we publish anywhere from 1 to 4 stories a day, 5 days a week. So we really try to always have new content of the site, which luckily for us, there's no shortage of that. You'd think we'd run out of stories, but we're not. And so I can verify we've got a stock full of stories for the next chunk of weeks, and I'm always amazed by that. So the team's always doing a ton of work to make this possible, and they've been, behind it from the beginning, and it still stands true today.
I mean, the amount of stories that you have, I think, points to the talent of the team. It points also, though, to the talent of our workforce here at Michigan Medicine. I always say at Headlines, if we have 35,000 employees, we have at least 35,000 stories to tell, right? Like somebody somewhere has a story to tell, whether it's on their personal life, in their personal life, their personal journey, what they're doing work-wise. I mean, there's just so many stories to tell. It's about finding those and knowing the right questions to ask. And clearly your team does that. So kudos to all of you. I know you have a special event coming up, to celebrate this 10-year milestone. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course I can. So June 11th in the Ford Auditorium, we'll be hosting the first ever Health Lab live show. And basically what this is, it's kind of a play off of these podcast live shows that if you listen to podcasts, some of these shows hit the road and they have like a live audience show. That's basically what we're going to do. So we're going to bring an article to life, and we're going to have, Mary's actually going to be one of the interviewers. And then Ed Bottomley, our social media manager, is going to be the other interviewer. And we're going to have 2 experts. One is Dr. Randolph. He is going to be talking about perimenopause and menopause. And the other one is Dr. Wright, and she is going to be talking about the silent symptoms and signs you need to know about your kidney health. And so basically what's going to happen is they're going to interview them live, and you're going to be able to watch. So you'll be able to have some popcorn, get free swag, enter into a raffle, which you could win a swag bag full of goodies, or get a $200 gift card to the tech shop. So pretty good raffles if you attend the event. So it will be recorded actually, and also the audio will be recorded as well. And we'll be putting it out as a Health Lab article after the event, and then also as a podcast episode too. So it's really cool. You'll kind of get to be there, front row, getting to see an expert interview, what kind of questions are asked, and just see how like the sauce is a little bit made. And then when you read the story online, you'll be like, oh, hey, I was there in person. So spread the word and definitely come and get excited, because we're really excited and think it's going to be a great event.
That sounds amazing. And we'll put some information about that event up on Headlines too, so you can find it there. So make sure you check that out. I'm really looking forward to that. That's great. Now, before we go, I know this might catch you off guard, but I just need to ask, is there a story that you've worked on in your time or that you've read from Health Lab that really stands out over the past 10 years? Something that has really just stuck with you over the years, or it could be a brand new story, who knows? But Mary, let's start with you.
Yeah, there are so many, Daniel, so it is really hard for me to pick, but I would say that the thing that really I feel I get the goosebumps over is during COVID, we were able to use the Health Lab as a platform for accurate information. And it feels, it's hard to kind of put yourself back into that position, but we didn't, people were confused, people were scared, and they were looking for a place, they were looking for good information. And we had this platform ready where we could send out accurate info. And we were able to track at least one of our stories about COVID. And when there were outbreaks in different states, we noticed that more people in that state were clicking on our content. So we would get like little spikes in California or Texas or Florida when the outbreak was hitting. And that made me feel really good because we were getting good info out there. Obviously, we were promoting our brand, of course, but we were also just, helping people and trying to make sure that, fewer people got sick. So it's one of those things that makes me feel really good about what we're able to accomplish with this platform.
I mean, we literally could have been saving lives, right, with that information. It's really astounding. Rebecca, do you have anything that stands out?
Well, it's so hard to pick. I mean, especially when I was day-to-day working at the CS Mott Children's Hospital, there were so many patient stories that I loved. And it was also really self-serving for me because every time as a parent of young kids, I had a question, I'd be like, we should do a blog post about this. And then I could get on the phone with the doctor and get all the answers. But this is probably not the most strategic answer, but I will say when I was doing the Mott stuff, we did a post, I think we called it TikTok initially. It was all about ticks. And I think to this day, every year we update that post and rerun it. In fact, I think ticks feel like they're worse this year than what I've ever experienced before. So it's like the gift that keeps giving because every year people have questions about ticks. And we're able to provide easy to access information for them. So I think that one is certainly not the most strategic, but it's definitely been something that's gotten a lot of exposure.
Well, there's always going to be topics that people care about or that just come up. I know like nosebleeds, right, is one of the most popular stories of all time. And you wouldn't think that it's the most exciting topic, but people want to learn about it because it affects so many people. Johanna, do you have anything that stands out?
Just like Mary said about COVID, I mean, it was so cool to see that we were already established and ready to go when, this horrible thing was happening in the world and people viewed us as this trusted resource. And we were pumping out content left and right because there was so much information to get out there and also kind of myths to dispel and so much to talk about. And, this might feel like a little bit of a cop out saying favorite story, but I used to always say in my old positions that, oh gosh, I wish I got to work on that story too. And that story, because you're kind of like in your lane in these certain divisions and departments that you work for, but I kind of get to touch on all of them because I get to read and edit all of them. So I always find that to be a treat. But I do also love as TikTok has emerged and all these, social media platforms and these, questionable trends that come up. And when we're able to hop on those and say, oh, no, explosions, don't do that. And here's why it's very dangerous. and the Barbie feet trend and kind of these funny ones, but, these things that people might be curious of or they hear their kids talking about, and then we're addressing it and then they're able to be in the know. So I love that we're able to hop on things that are happening right in the news that we can get the expert opinions on and get down to the real information that you need to know about. And just that, there's so much content. It's really hard to choose. There's so many good stories.
I love it. Well, thank you so much to all three of you for sharing this information about Health Lab and the exciting 10-year anniversary of the publication. If you want to learn more about Health Lab, head on over to headlines at mmheadlines.org. That's mmheadlines.org. And if you liked what you heard today, check out all previous episodes of The Wrap. You can find them on your favorite podcast hosting platform, on the Headlines homepage, or on the Michigan Medicine YouTube channel. Thank you again to Mary, Rebecca, and Johanna for joining us, and thank you to all of our listeners and viewers for everything you do for patients, families, and each other. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Daniel.